Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the AI for All podcast. I'm Ryan Chacon. With me today is my co-host, Neil Sahota, AI advisor to the UN and one of the founders of AI for Good. Neil, how's it going?
Yeah, I'm doing all right, Ryan. I'm actually stoked because we're going to have a little bit of a twist on our podcast today. It's a great topic that I think applies to, every business. I won't steal the thunder yet, but just for the audience, you're in for a good time.
Yeah, very excited for this episode. Without further ado, today's episode, we are going to be discussing the age of AI, what leaders can really do to help their organization thrive during this period. And to discuss this, we have Maureen Metcalf, CEO and founder of Innovative Leadership Institute. They are a management consulting firm that is committed to shaping the future of leadership across industries. Maureen, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you both, Ryan and Neil. I'm really excited about this conversation. And Neil is one of my favorite people, so this is going to be great fun.
Perfect. Well, let's start this off and hear a little bit more about your background experience, kind of how you got to where you are now, and then we'll take it from there.
Just the short version is economics, undergrad, MBA, finance, grew up not really knowing what economists did, but it was a great education, started in actually the computer industry, then went to management consulting, so had both ends of technology and implementation, and then eventually started my own firm to look at how do we help affect transformations more successfully.
That's great. I think one thing that's often overlooked is there are so many different parts for an organization to transform what they're doing, especially in the age of digital transformation. It's not just bringing in technology to their business, but it's also things they do internally with their company, with their culture, with their leadership, the way the individuals just as people within the company act and how they make decisions. So I think there are a lot of different elements that people often overlook or are not thinking about when they're talking about organizational change, especially when they're really talking about or they're really focused on digital transformation, for instance.
One of the things that I really left large consulting to explore was what's missing. And this was a long time ago, and I'm sure that their models have progressed well beyond what I've done. But what we really look at is who am I as the leader? What do I believe? What do I do? Sometimes those aren't aligned. And then what does our culture believe and support? And what do our systems support? And often, going in as a consultant, we change systems, but we don't necessarily change cultures. Different people change behaviors. And often we don't get it all to the belief system of leaders who may not support the thing that they're implementing. And getting those aligned really is the magic for transformation.
I'd love it if you could tell us a little bit about the current state that we are in from an industry perspective when it comes to technology. We talk about AI a ton on this podcast, obviously. A lot of people talk about the age of AI. What does that mean to you, and kind of where do you see things now versus maybe where they've been over the last few years and how that compares?
I was just looking over, we also do a podcast, and I have AI podcasts back several years. So for me, AI is not a new thing. It is certainly with the release of ChatGPT, it seems like we've all lost our minds about what AI is and can do. And I think it's important to remember that this technology has been in development for decades. And it's like the many overnight sensations that have taken 20 years to happen. This has seemingly had a fairly slow uptake, and now we're on the hockey stick side or the hype cycle. And for businesses, which is where I spend most of my time, it's now at the point, we've been reading about it at the World Economic Forum and other places, it's now at the point where it's real. And we as leaders must keep pace with it or we will be obsolete. And I'll tie that to even the name of our company. It's innovating leadership. If you're not updating how you think about and execute leadership, you become obsolete, just like your cell phone or any other piece of technology. And we often don't think about, as humans and leaders, that our inner mental algorithm makes us either ahead of the curve, on the curve, or behind the curve. And for leaders who haven't already started this journey, either you are behind or you will soon be behind.
It's an interesting thing because, your books where you talk about like the characteristics of leaders, some of these things. And I think when it comes to AI, A lot of people are wondering, like, okay, are these tools to help me operationally be a better leader? Is there another angle here? Is that, are some of these tools out there, can they actually make people better leaders? Like, can they actually transform their leadership style for, well, as the workforce is changing?
So in our recent book, actually in each chapter, we talked about AI tools to help leaders develop. I think some of them are early in their development. So we did some podcasts with sales enablement firm, and there's a lot in the sales enablement space, as an example, that an AI can listen to a salesperson, record the call, and then give feedback on how they're communicating. If we look at something similar for leaders, many of us are using AI assistants to already record the calls. Are we then running them through an AI to help us diagnose where was your message effective, giving feedback as an example, and where did you not speak to the person? Did you talk too much? Did you ask enough questions? All of those things as an example. And I believe that this is just the beginning of what's going to happen.
Are we moving towards like precision leadership? Leaders are supposed to champion new ideas, initiatives, need to inspire people. Are they able to do that rather than like, let me try and find a good message that'll appeal to most people? Are they able to do that at the individual level and say, okay, for this person, I need to talk about this, and this person, I need to talk about that. And that's how I'm going to get to buy it.
I love the idea of precision leadership. You and I haven't talked about that today. Years ago, Karl Rove was helping craft speeches for George Bush, and he used basically developmental psychology to stratify the US population. What would happen if I had an AI that helped me do that stratification, which does exist, not quite to the granularity that you're talking about yet, but what if I could also, and it's done by the charisma people, actually. Antonakis does it I could feed a conversation with you into his algorithm and it would tell me how much charisma you had. So how about if it diagnosed your leadership maturity? That would tell me very precisely, how do I craft messages? Are you a black and white thinker? Or are you a nuanced thinker? How creative and innovative are you? How inspirational are you? It may not tell me your ethnic background and things to avoid, but I think that we're getting to a place where if I, and I haven't done this, I'm guessing there are tools out there that could go look at your social media and spit out a report for me right now. And that would say, if you want to talk to Neil and influence him, here are his hot buttons.
There are tools like that, AI systems and psychology and neurolinguistic. This is I think a lot of powerful stuff you're talking about here, but companies come in all sizes, right? I mean, are these tools just for the big companies, or is these things that the medium and small companies can take advantage of?
I run a small company and we're using all kinds of tools. Because of the mass appeal, each of our employees pays $20 a month for ChatGPT. We have 15 other very specific AI related tools. Each of them is based on a subscription service. So if millions or hundreds of millions of people are using them, they are profitable and they're also accessible to small companies like ours.
Yeah, Neil, one of the things that I was thinking about as you were talking about precision leadership is the data that would be required to make that work, right? Like what information would you need to be able to collect, and how would you collect that information on an ongoing basis through engagement with those employees, or even the conversations maybe they're having without you, to understand them at a level to where you can take that data, input it in, and then have it output some kind of response on how you should either address those people, talk to those people, and so forth. I'd be curious to get your thoughts on the data aspect of it and how that could work. Because obviously, Maureen mentioned the social media side as well, but just what would it look like kind of on a daily basis, or what do you think would be required in order to kind of get there?
One of my colleagues has a senior role at a company that data mines within companies. So I would have a subscription. They mine all of the online chats. I'm not sure how deep they go, but to say your Slack, your Teams, and they look, it's anonymized, but there are algorithms They are AI based and they look for employee sentiment. So we introduce a new policy about return to work, and you can tell where people either are frustrated. So some percent will be frustrated, some percent will be happy. Then you'll see where they get hostile, and you can tell what part of the demographic is getting hostile, and it helps companies on a daily basis identify where their policies are working and not working. It also will de-anonymize where someone is doing something that is illegal or against company policy. So if I start threatening someone that if they don't take care of my personal chores, then I'm going to take money out of their salary, it will de-anonymize, send it to HR. HR will have a conversation with me. So they call that kind of lawsuit prevention. So that's on a very small scale. Neil, I'd be curious what you're seeing on a much larger scale.
I think I'm probably going to freak most of our audience out right here, but Microsoft actually has a suite called Microsoft Workplace Insights using large language models, LLMs. The AI actually will analyze your emails, your Word documents, like even some things around PowerPoint, Excel, those kinds of things. And so it can actually, learn about you, the employee's work style, how they communicate, how to communicate with that person. Give some coaching, on things to include an email, which is a little bit of word coaching. So employers have a lot of data at their fingertips, because you think about every employee, just how many emails are they doing? How many Word docs or Office documents are you doing? And it's all technically their data. So from an employee standpoint, you can't make the argument of invasion of privacy. You're not supposed to be doing personal stuff on work computers anyways. At least that's what we agree to. Businesses small to large can actually take advantage of that.
It's definitely something that is becoming more of a thing to focus on than it ever has really before, with more organizations focusing on that data and that information, not necessarily for negative reasons, but be able to collect data like we talk about and be able to make better decisions, insights, and learn more about the company to make better decisions for hopefully everybody. But there obviously is that other side of it they have to be very conscious of as an individual if you're going to start to kind of get into that space. So let me ask you this. When we talk about what leaders of organizations can do to help organizations when they're transforming or help them to transform in general, what is really required for leaders to help their organization thrive during this kind of emerging period, this age of AI, everything that we're kind of talking about now? Just love if you can kind of talk through us the skills, the requirements, the things that you think are really important for leaders to focus on and maybe discover within themselves as they kind of take this on.
I see AI as one in a series of changes and transformations that we as leaders have implemented over time. So you go from something like a large ERP system that executives plan for, they execute, they continue to manage and monitor. Stuff always goes wrong, but it's a relatively planned implementation. If you look at the other end of the continuum, you had COVID, unplanned, unmanaged, unknown. And so we as leaders are navigating that range. I don't think anyone sits in steady state anymore. It's just, are the changes planned or unplanned? I would put AI somewhere in the middle. Companies can choose when to enter, but their employees may choose at a different rate, either faster or slower. And Neil talks about people who are using AI unbeknownst to their companies so that they look better. So as leaders, this is a huge change management project. I have to understand, I have to manage the risks, I have to communicate with my humans, and I have to help them. I'm going to use some of Neil's words, develop hybrid intelligence. So the example I'm using, even though it's a concrete example, is so we've all been at home during COVID. We've now gone some amount of back to work. For some people, that's pretty much a zero. For others, high end. So we now move into our new office space that we're using differently post-COVID. And imagine the three of us walk in, and when we get there, each of us is given, I'm going to do a Star Wars reference, an R2-D2 or a C-3PO that's updated now for current stuff. So our digital companion happens to be a concrete robot that we can see. We go to meetings, they sit behind us, they take notes, all the things that our AI can do. So rather than an otter AI, I'm going to imagine my C3PO sitting behind me doing notes and analyzing those notes and giving me back data. So now each of us has that set of digital companions, and depending on which robot we buy, they will have different capacities. So if I think about that, and I'm now leading this organization, before people step in to this new space, I would need to communicate to them, we're changing spaces, this is what it looks like, helping people understand. And oh, by the way, some of you are going to be really surprised. Your favorite Star Wars characters are going to meet you. Others are going to be completely creeped out by the idea that their privacy is being invaded because there's some alien robot sitting in their office. And I think and this is where Neil started, how can I personalize that communication? Because for my team, I know who's going to be totally geeked out and lose days of productivity playing with the robots, and who's not going to go near the thing because they're creepy. So how do I help each stratify the groups of people, help them understand, convey messages that help them be aware and accept and use these new tools? The next is a growth mindset. How do I help people move from that, I want to hide under my desk, it's uncomfortable, it's not safe, kind of the things we talk about, psychological safety. If we overlay that about 40% of our young folks are dealing with anxiety. So how do I help people who are already less comfortable interact with technology that for some of them, this is the best thing they've ever seen. For others, this just amplifies the anxiety. So back to personalizing, I need to understand who's on my team and how to help them move from fixed to growth. And part of that's safety, part of it's what I communicate, part of it's also what I don't communicate. I don't overwhelm people with all this cool stuff if all they need to know is it's 3 clicks and it makes something easier. Next is adaptiveness. How do I help people build resilience? And that's the physical resilience, the emotional resilience, the mindfulness that goes with understanding when I'm on a downward mental spiral, I can just take some deep breaths. How do I help people build those practices so that when these things become uncomfortable, because it's not if, it's when, how do I help them maintain a level of stability? Next is emotional intelligence, starting with myself. I need to be self-aware enough that I know I'm on a downward spiral and manage myself. And I need to also harness the excitement. How do I take those excited moments and amplify what I'm able to do? Next is an abundance mindset, and that taps into the growth mindset similar, but in the abundance thinking, we would also maybe call that positive thinking. So am I able to go from a place of neutral or negative and move into seeing the opportunities and the hopefulness? Because as soon as I am fearful and lacking hope, I'm not going to be able to make much progress. So how do we as leaders understand what's compelling to people and what's not? I don't want to talk about curing cancer if you don't care. Next is domain expertise. And this, I think, is interesting because now when I'm using an AI to give me answers, if I don't have a sufficient level of expertise in my area, I'm going to get hiccups or probably more likely incomplete information, in some cases, bad information. And I'm going to look like a dope if I turn that in as a work product, if it's full of errors or omission. The other is AI skills. How do I work with all these things? And their new ones are coming out every second. Which ones do I use? Which ones do I not use? At what pace? And there's a whole question of I could do nothing but check out new AI stuff and still be behind. So there is for me as a leader, what do I need to know? And what do I just say that'd be interesting if I had time? One of the key things leaders do is make decisions. So given my functional expertise and my AI expertise, how do I take all of that information, think about the system in which I'm operating, and make good decisions? And then risk awareness, especially at the governance level. I need to understand what are the risks to my enterprise and how do I mitigate, but not mitigate to the point where we do nothing and miss the opportunity to stay competitive with our peers.
I think one of the key things is a lot of people say like, well, AI robot is never going to take my job as a leader. And it's probably true. It probably won't. Maureen, we've had several discussions that it's not like AI replacing the person, the leader. It's going to be leaders using AI replacing leaders that don't. It's not that if you get cut that, your job has just gone away or you're replaced by an AI robot. It's just that one leader can do what three leaders are doing today. That's the way to really think about it.
How does this kind of play into the authenticity of just like human to human connection though? Right? Like you have leaders who there's value in the relationships they build with the people that they work with. Maybe they are less efficient than other leaders, but people like working for them. People like the engagement they have with them. If you bring that number down and you have less people because the other ones can be more efficient with what they get done, how does it play into kind of balancing that side of things? Because there's a human element to all of this that no matter how good the AI is, I think it's hard to replace, especially if people know that a lot of the conversations are generated by the help of an AI tool. And it's like, is that really authentic? Or it's like, is it, will people start to read through that? So how have you guys thought about kind of that level of importance for leaders within an organization?
As a person who spends, let's take a middle ground, leaders spend probably between 50 and 90 hours a week working. Assume I can get a third of my work done by an AI. And yet I'm going to add back some of that time with my people. So I will have offloaded some, and I believe we will replace some of that work that can be automated with the human connection that can't be automated. So as a leader, if I'm good at identifying which stuff I can outsource to my machine sitting behind me, then I'm able to reprogram the time I spend with my humans. Because to your point, I, as the real Maureen, am able to have interactions with my team that can't truly be replicated by the fake Maureen digital twin.
I agree. I think this goes back to hybrid intelligence. To be a good leader, you have to be good with people, period. The ability to create buy-in, champion ideas, come up with value propositions, that's not going to change. AI is just giving you more, data points and things, more insights so that you can make deeper connections with people. And so if you're not good at that to begin with, AI is not going to help you overcome that problem.
This is a good place to kind of wrap things up. This has been a great conversation. Where can people learn more about kind of what you're doing, learn about the book, all those kinds of good things?
So innovativeleadership.com is the website. There's a bunch of information. Like I said, we're going to be adding the assessment. That's going to be in the insights section, probably on the sidebar, like every other blog.
Whether you aspire to be a leader or not, we all know that as you advance your career, leadership skills are going to be critical. So it's never too late to get a jump start on them. And I think we've learned from Maureen that what makes you an innovative leader should share 10 skill sets, but also how this is changing in the time of AI.
Maureen, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate your time and excited to get this out to our audience.
Thank you, Ryan and Neil. It's an honor to get to share my insights with your audience.